we are actually given freedom of choice. We are given the ability to manifest whatever we want. However, most of us take for granted that standard piece of equipment that we are given at birth: our brain, our mind, our essence. What's going on, guys? I am so happy to be here once again on episode 4 of Walking Manifestator. And I appreciate every single one of you that is following the journey, first of all. And as you know, in this podcast, we are committed to essentially bringing awareness to our inner thoughts. We are walking manifestators, whether we realize it or not, whether we are doing it intentionally or subconsciously. We are constantly manifesting. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about something very interesting, which is, what is the story you are constantly telling yourself? And in the previous episodes, we talked a little bit about paradigms, right? We talked about how whatever upbringing you had in your life, whether that was a loving, supportive family that was constantly there for you, and you hit a time in your life where you just rebelled out, or you had a family that was not there and you had a hard upbringing, and you actually had a moment in your life where you hit rock bottom, but then you completely changed your life. There's so many different scenarios for every single one of our stories. The reality is that the paradigm is a series of events that have conditioned us. It is a habitual behavior that you are now acting in the assumption of, based off past experiences that have defined who you identify to be. And as we talked about that in the last episode, we really dive deep on certain key points of what we now perceive as our reality, right? And I think that for the most part, we can all relate that we are constantly telling ourselves a story in our heads, right? Whether that be, did I take out the trash? Whether that be, I'm going to be late for work? Whether that be, oh my gosh, like I have all these things to do. Whatever it is in your life, we are constantly having a dialogue, an internal dialogue. And I know some people have gotten really good at ignoring that thought and maybe just like filtering it out. But as we all know, when you ignore things, and if you did not know this, I want to invite you to see this perspective. It's when you resist something, you are persisting that. It persists in your life, because now what is essentially happening is that you are resisting something so much that in every situation that continues to essentially show up. And the reason why I find in my journey of not only spiritual healing, but mental healing has really been impacted by the story that I believed, right? Because when you have had limiting, and I'm, saying limiting quote unquote now because I don't see them as limiting anymore, but at once upon a time I did, and I saw limiting beliefs such as I didn't have a mom, I didn't have a dad in my life. I was raised with my grandparents that were barely making ends meet. I was living literally at one point in time in like a storage that was like part of like a house that wasn't really like an actual like house that we were living in. Whenever it would rain, water would come in. Whether that was hardships that I encountered when I was, growing up, all those variables in my life were things that I personally felt those were the reasons why I couldn't succeed, because I didn't have the rich dad or a rich mom. I didn't have all these things that in my mind created a successful person. However, that story completely changed as I continued to learn that the reality was those thoughts that I had been having for such a long time were subconsciously manifesting more drama, more chaos, more toxic behaviors, more toxic patterns, more toxic people into my life. And you see, when I had my first son, it was such an awakening moment because without realizing it, I started to manifest wanting a better life for both of us. I knew I wanted to give him better than I did. I knew that I didn't want to have to go to, the store and be worrying about what I was going to buy him for food. I knew that I wanted to do more, but I didn't really understand the material behind manifesting at that time. I just knew that subconsciously I wanted more, and the universe started to provide opportunities. And that story that I was then narrating in my mind started to change, and I stopped being the victim. I stopped being the person that was constantly feeling as if everything was happening to them, but now everything was happening for me. It was happening for growth. I don't know if you guys have ever listened to this analogy, but I love it. Like what happens to an arrow, right? Like an actual bow and arrow. When you pull on that arrow, and well, it's actually the bow, right? And not the arrow. Alexa, hello. But when you pull on it, it's causing resistance. And as you release it, it propels into a new height, a new, now extreme. And for most of us, that resistance when we're growing can be uncomfortable. It can put us and test us through some very, very challenging moments of contrast. But the story we tell ourselves is really what is going to give the meaning behind what we are going through at that time. So if you are somebody that is going through something hard, and I know we all have our stories, that's what makes us all uniquely beautiful. You have something that you've gone through, just like I have something that I've gone through. And we can sit there and choose to say that all those things happened and we didn't deserve it. Or we can sit there and analyze how we actually grew from that. The story you tell yourself is going to allow you to do one of two things. Either you're going to be like I was, and you're going to think, well, this is why I can't succeed. This is why all the odds are against me. This is why this just won't happen for me. Or you can choose to adopt a new reality and change the story and change yourself from the victim to now being the protagonist in that story and saying, you know what? Those things happened, but what did I learn from it? Whether that was the worst situations you've encountered, I promise you, if you really look deep down and you allow the ego to really not be something you're focusing on, because our ego is very good at making stories around what it wants you to focus on. Well, no, like, how can you forgive your parents if they abandon you? Like, no, well, they shouldn't have done that to you. Well, no, like, they were wrong. The ego is there to essentially just protect you. It's like this little like beast that we've been feeding, right? And the more that we continue to tell the stories in our mind that are feeding this little beast, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, when you change that and you say, you know what? Yeah, I went through that. However, I went through this and it actually brought me this awareness. I went through this encounter and it allowed me to see things in a completely different perspective. You see, one of the TED Talks that I'm working on right now is really bringing awareness around suicidal thoughts, because I feel like so many of us, and this is definitely one of those conversations that like most people just rather not have. Most people at one point or the other, they've felt like life was just too much. And when those things happen and you feel like just wanting out, sometimes that seems like the easiest way to just tap out. But the reality is that if you invite your mind to really see, hey, you know what, we're going through this, but guess what? When we're done with this experience, you're going to come out on the other end and you're going to be a badass. class because of it. You're going to be somebody that just overall has so much resilience. You're going to be somebody that can now speak from knowledge, from experience, to somebody that might need your help. You see, I'm part of this committee, and we essentially either it's volunteer work or it's actually giving back to the community through nonprofit, or whether it's situations where we've gone and donated funds. And it was so eye-opening because we went, and I remember going, and it's like the Women's Transitional Center, right? So there's a bunch of beautiful souls that have just gone through so much, right? Whether that was abuse in a relationship, whether that was, neglect, you name it. And as we were there, I remember being in that center and having an eye-opening experience, because I remember seeing these women there with their kids just, completely lost, completely just, trying to move forward as best as they could. And I remember seeing myself in those little kids. I remember my grandmother, because, fines were always tight, she actually would take me to this place where it was for free because of the government and stuff. And she would qualify based off her income, and she would take me there, and they would give us food. And a bunch of us were just overall just trying to survive, right? That's the best I can explain it as. But the people that were there, they weren't really teaching us anything, right? It was just kind of all right, we're here to watch you because we're getting paid by the state, and that's it. And then, we leave. And I remember seeing these people, and it reminded me of why it is that I'm doing this, why it is that I want to inspire more people, that you can truly change no matter what you've gone through. I know that so many people have talked about, oh, I did this in my life. But then when you listen to their story, for a lot of us, we're like, oh yeah, but you did those things because you had X, Y, and Z, right? You had the family, you had the background, you had the education. And for some of us, when we didn't grow up with that, that becomes our belief system. And we believe that story that we're constantly telling ourselves. And in that moment, when I was looking at them, I had this profound call within me that just told me this is what you're going to be doing. Your mission at one point in time is going to be to go and do nonprofit work to actually share this message that you can change your life by becoming aware of your thoughts and starting to embody who it is that you picture to be, not what you are right now, not what you perceive to be, but who is it in your mind that you want to be. Because think about it, so many of us, when we were younger, we would dream about things, right? We had situations where we just, wanted to be a lawyer. We wanted to be an astronaut. We wanted to be a rock star, whatever it is that you thought about when you wanted to be younger, when you were younger. And it's interesting because if you really study, what was the tipping point? What was that moment in your life that changed what you believed in? I promise you, it was something that somebody told you and made you feel. Somebody that told you weren't good enough, somebody that told you weren't worthy, somebody that told you couldn't do it. For me, I had a teacher when I was in 3rd grade. I told her I wanted to be an attorney, and she looked at me and she was like, well, you see, that's a pretty hard career. I don't think that you want to go down that path, essentially, and maybe you should look for something easier. And now I know that, bless her heart, she, in her mind, that was what she really thought, especially teaching kids in schools that are not really a wealthy school, right? That's what she realized. That's what she probably realized that we were going to be good enough for. And internally, it did something for me, right? It kind of crushed me. It made me feel well, maybe I just can do this thing, right? Now, I can truthfully say I'm blessed to make what more attorneys make, at least here in my state in Texas where I'm at. A lot of them are in, the low 6 figures, and, some of them, of course, as you get higher up there, definitely that can change. But I've been blessed to have an opportunity to grow a business that I'm actually proud of and that I'm in love with. and not be miserable when I go to work, right? And for me, my real estate was like one of my like stepping stones into just becoming that higher version of me. And as I'm launching these like coaching programs that I'm doing, I'm like, oh my gosh, like all of those lessons really helped me envision what it is that I wanted to be. Without realizing it, without knowing what was happening, all those lessons were teaching me something. And I want to remind you, accept responsibility for your life. Know that it is you who will get you to where you want to go, no one else. Les Brown says that. And another very inspiring quote is by Neil Donald Walsh, and he talks about, thank you for showing me this problem is already solved. Him and Russell Harper talk about it. They essentially are sharing that whenever you think about something in your life, whenever you think about, well, this is something in my life that is bad, you're giving it meaning. There's no like real good or bad thing in the eyes of the universe, in the eyes of God. If you think about it and humor me for a second, things are just happening, right? Like that's just the universe. It's constantly going, it's constantly moving forward, it's constantly allowing us to learn. We are the only species that does not have a instinct when they are born. You know, a lion knows that they need to go out and hunt, right? A dog knows that they have to start walking, right? They get their milk from their mom. Like they have an instinct within them. And we are actually given freedom of choice. We are given the ability to manifest whatever we want. However, most of us take for granted that standard piece of equipment that we are given at birth, our brain, our mind, our essence. And we give meaning to things that happen in life by experiences that we've encountered in the past, right? We think, well, everybody leaves. Therefore, when you get into a new relationship, automatically you're assuming you're going to leave as well because everybody leaves. What are you attracting into your life at that point? Why is it that you're still stuck on what maybe your parents did to you when you were younger? Whether that was neglect, whether that was abuse, whether that was abandonment. What good is that doing to you? Think about that. But the story you're constantly narrating in your mind is constantly triggering that, and your mind literally is feeding the subconscious something that it does not know if it is actually happening or if it's just a story. Therefore, you're going through all of those emotions all over again. You're constantly being triggered. And that's the worst part, because you're reliving that. You're putting your body, you're putting your peace, your energy all through that moment all over again. And that is why whatever is happening in your life, we are choosing what meaning we give it. Have you ever wondered why certain people keep attracting the same personalities? Like they were in a relationship where the person treated them very badly, and then they get in another relationship and they end up in the same situation, and then another one. I know all about that, okay, by the way, because I hadn't worked on myself. I was in situations where I was attracting more of what I still was at that time. And then when things wouldn't work out, it was like, yeah, well, everybody leaves. You need to take time to really dissect what it is that your truest and highest version looks like and work on yourself. A lot of people are scared to be alone. They rather be in a miserable, unhappy relationship, marriage, friendship than be alone. And actually, being alone is one of your superpowers. If you can learn how to truly love yourself, understand who you really are to the core, then you're going to attract more of that beautiful tribe. Because we are humans that love, and whether you want to say, no, I don't like to hang out with people, We all need somebody. That is the reality. Like, it's been scientifically proven, and you can sit here and fight me on that all day. You already know I'm a lover. I'm not a fighter, so I'm not going to argue back. But it's been proven. It really has been proven. And I used to tell myself that I didn't like people. Like, oh, I don't want to talk to people. But that wasn't true. I didn't like certain types of people because they brought something out of me that I didn't like. They made me realize things about me that I didn't like. And they say the truth hurts, right? It doesn't have to hurt if you choose how you react to it, if you choose to embody it and learn from it. But for most of us, we get triggered by it, right? We feel as if, okay, well, why is this person saying this to me? Why is this person saying, these things that deep down inside, are actually truth? If somebody tells you, oh, it's because you don't work as hard as you could be working, and that triggers you, why? If it's not true, it wouldn't trigger you, right? So a lot of the times we get upset about mirrors that are literally there to teach us something about that situation that could actually help us be better. But instead of doing that, we put ourselves in a situation where we think, well, they're wrong, I'm right, and that is what it is. And then no growth happens because that story that you're constantly telling yourself isn't allowing for you to grow. What if you change the context? I watched this seminar from, oh God, I'm going blank right now. Tony Robbins, there you go. I was like, how can I forget one of my idols? But he was talking, and it was a seminar. It was beautiful because essentially what happened is a beautiful soul got up and she shared how she had gone through some very, very traumatic experiences where they were in this like cult. Essentially, it was a religion, but it was like a cult. And they essentially put kids through the worst experience of their life. And by doing this, they were symbolizing the love that they had for God. And it was just so sad to watch this. Okay, I'm like crying as I'm watching it. And the girl, she tells Tony Robbins, like, you know what? I didn't realize how that actually was an opportunity for me to now be able to help and impact other people, because I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be here anymore, but now I know I have a purpose. I have a calling. And by her shifting the narration on her voice, in her story, in her thoughts, she was able to now be a survivor of something and be there for other people that have encountered same situations as her. And that's what I want to invite you to do. Instead of holding a grudge to somebody that did something to you once upon a time that is constantly killing you because you're being triggered by that, learn how to let that go. And the only way you can learn to let that go is if you truly take responsibility for what it is that you can learn from that situation. And once again, maybe this is gonna, trigger some of you when it comes to like, how do you want me to forgive somebody that did something to me? And trust me, I know the feeling. I felt that way for a long time because I was like, how do you expect me to forgive somebody that did these things to me? How can you expect me to forgive somebody that hurt me at such degree? But you see, that's not a reflection on you, that's a reflection on them. And at the end of the day, what you do have the power to control is you. How you respond, how you react. And by you becoming aware of this is literally going to change your life forever. Because you will no longer say to yourself, well, I want to be happy. However, it's only going to be if I have more money. I want to be happy, but I will do that when I have a partner. I want to be happy, but I'm not going to do that until I get the job that I want. No, choose to be happy now. Choose to be at peace now. Choose to place your energy in the right place and invest in yourself. grow, love yourself. I couldn't say that for a long time. I couldn't say that I actually loved myself. And right now, you ask me, I love myself. I was listening to this video that came out, and the girl was like, honey, if you're gonna try and date me, you're competing with me, not with a man, not with a woman, with me, because I love myself. And it was so beautiful because it's true. If you love yourself, you know your worth, you know your standards. But when you don't appreciate yourself, when you don't love yourself, when you don't care for yourself, you let others treat you in a way that you do not deserve. And by you changing the story in your mind, by you changing those internal thoughts, that internal dialogue, you can truly shift your reality into something beyond imaginable. So with that being said, I want to appreciate every moment that you are spending listening to these podcasts. I speak from the soul when I share these messages. I don't have any notes. I don't have anything, unless it's like a quote that I want to read to you guys, and I'll write it down. But it's everything coming from the soul. And I appreciate all the support. And please, if there's anything in particular that you guys want to talk about, send us an email. We have the email listed on our description. We would love to make this a community, and unity is in capitals, okay? So it's all about your tribe. And when you find your tribe, my gosh, it's a beautiful feeling. Trust me, it really is. So with that, I am sending you much love, many blessings, and I will talk to you on the next one.